if you have got frontline colleagues or operational staff within your organization and you are struggling to know how to engage with them, then this video is for you. This is my top 10 tips, and this is something I have been working on for a while. So this is where you need to be, guys. This is ERG Strategy, the channel that helps you build sustainable, impactful employee networks and resource groups that actually make a difference. So if you want to find out more about that, new videos every Tuesday. I'm doing my best. I almost didn't get to make this one, and this is the first video of 2026, but new videos every Tuesday at 5 p.m. and Friday 8:30 UK time. I go live every Friday on LinkedIn. So if you really want to get into the comments and stuff, LinkedIn probably is the place to check that out. Let's get into this. So I've got 10 tips for you. I am going to need notes because 10 is a lot, right? 10 tips for frontline engagement, right? So the first one is actually to coordinate across networks. And the reason being, usually, for a lot of organizations, the number of frontline colleagues way outnumbers the number of head office colleagues. So what that means is for you as a network, you may well have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people that sit within your network at like a kind of like office level in terms of office workers, but actually you may well have frontline colleagues that are actually delivering the work, delivering the services, making the products, etc., that number into the tens or even hundreds of thousands. So the first thing that I would say is, if you want to reduce the workload and if you want to get coverage, given that office staff tend to be the smaller number, you need to coordinate across the networks. What that means is you need to work together, and you need to almost like divide and conquer, although you're not trying to conquer the front line, but you're trying to conquer the challenge of the front line, which is bigger than you are as networks. So if you coordinate, there are more of you. And by coordinate, I actually mean work with each other and potentially represent each other as well. And I'll get onto that. But basically, first of all, you need to coordinate across networks so there's more resources, more coverage, you can cover more of the front line. So things like splitting sites and regions between networks and representing each other, having a shared calendar when it comes to frontline engagement, and also shared comms or shared communications to make sure that you're not sort of like, it's not overkill and you're not bombarding people with things. Okay, what's next? Go where the work is. So tip number 2, go where the work is, right? Don't just kind of like sit in your head offices and, just do the usual things and expect to be able to reach the front line. You got to go where it is. So, go out on sites and find out about what they actually do on those sites. Find out what it's like doing a shift, right? Shadow somebody, do a day in the life. Go into the staff room, get involved in the conversations and explain what you're doing. Say that you run a network and that you're there just to kind of like figure out how you can make sure that the network meets the needs of everyone, right? It's pretty easy to do. So you need to sort of like design based on the reality of what's happening in the front line, not just what you guess is happening from HQ. So one way of being able to get out, assuming that you sometimes have your committee meetings face to face, have those at frontline or operational sites, right? So rotate them. If, for example, you meet once a quarter and it's face to face, rotate it around different frontline sites so that gives you an opportunity to talk to individuals in between. And also it shows those colleagues that you're interested, right? And that they can potentially come in, share their thoughts, etc. If not necessarily with those directly working on the front line because of working patterns and all of that, then at least with the managers and the team managers, supervisors, etc., you can have those conversations. That's the other thing, rotating your committee meetings out to sites. The next thing, so tip number 4, use a marketing lens. So when you think about your frontline and operational colleagues, don't just stick to the usual terminology around inclusion and, employee resource groups and things like that. Use a marketing lens. So think about them as a group of individuals that you're trying to market to that maybe are hard to reach. And so when you think about the language, think about language that's going to appeal to them, make things really sort of like straightforward, and make it really appealing, right? So have things like a hook. Use a hook, like a bit like I do at the start of this video, right? Use a hook. Use simple language. Encourage them to tell someone else. Use stories. Use QR codes. Just really put some effort into it. If you're not sure, speak to marketing, right? Because they commonly have to communicate and engage with the frontline anyway. So speak to marketing maybe to get some tips. Tip number 5, think about whether there are already some frontline or operational champions networks, and these may be change champions or staff forum representatives, things like that. Basically, just try to tap into an existing network of individuals that maybe have already volunteered to kind of be the person that gets involved in what's going on. There might be a little bit of a busybody, but that probably is to your benefit, right? So if there are these existing networks, tap into them. If there aren't, then maybe that's something that you and the other network leaders could potentially propose by working with the directors that look after frontline sites, and also the managers. Talk about whether something like a champions network or champion setup might work. Tip number 6, if there are already touch points for these colleagues, which there are likely to be, things like daily briefings, team huddles, notice boards, local WhatsApp groups, dare I say, employee forums, unions, see how you can tap into those routes. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. If there are routes of engagement that are already working for this particular group of colleagues, see how you can plug yourself into those routes to let them know about the networks and what it is that the networks offer and how it can benefit them, right? Let's not reinvent the wheel, because ain't nobody got time for that, right? Everybody's busy, right? And frontline, it's a huge mammoth task, okay? Tip number 7, find frontline friendly platforms. And I'm talking here now about online community. So where you are creating like online community groups, for example, if you're using Microsoft Viva Engage, make sure that your organization is also using the app capability so that frontline colleagues, especially those without laptops or those that cannot easily access laptops and emails and things like that during the day or during sort of their normal working hours, make sure that they are able to access these community platforms through an app. If Viva Engage is not widely used in your organization, or if frontline colleagues don't typically access the Viva Engage app for whatever reason, there are all kinds of like cultural reasons and sort of like core company norms and all of that sort of thing, then you may need to consider a different method. It could be an app. I know of organizations that have brought in a completely different app, even though they use Viva Engage. They've brought in a completely different app that they know all of the frontline can use and would be happy to use. So it could be something like that. Or it could be just that you look at different channels, right? So rather than it being your typical online community channel, it could be something else, you know. Some of the means, I can't say, I was going to say then a LinkedIn group. It could even be a Facebook group, but, you know, not a big fan of Facebook myself personally, and those colleagues may or may not be on LinkedIn, so that may or may not work. But I do know of some organizations actually that use Facebook groups, but I do think that comes with its challenges, shall we say. Let's just leave it there. In things like governance and moderation, which is difficult enough on company platforms like Viva Engage, would be an absolute minefield on social media. But if that's where people are, maybe you've got to go and meet them there and figure out how to use those platforms to the network's advantage. Tip number 8, give the frontline clear online roles. So let's assume that you're going to use a platform like Microsoft Viva Engage. There are roles that should be used within Microsoft Viva Engage to make this thing really work and to make the community work well and not just be like tumbleweed. And I'm going to do a whole video on Microsoft Viva Engage tips. I got these tips from Swoop Analytics, who actually are a partner of Microsoft Viva Engage, and they do benchmarking and they talk about what actually works. So please do check out that video. It's going to be out, I'm going to say, in like a couple of weeks. But there are clear roles that Swoop Analytics talk about, and that is the broadcaster, which is very limited. You wouldn't expect many people to be playing that role. This is kind of giving out things like news, announcements, resources, maybe signposting people. There is a responder, the person that answers every question, every comment, everything, maybe tags other people in. The catalyst is typically a person of influence, so like either a senior leader or a person of influence, an influencer, in terms of your company's perspective. And then you've got an engager, and again, that's just somebody who's like maybe like starting the odd conversation, getting people involved, maybe coming up with ideas that people can share or polls or whatever it be. And so you have these core roles. And please, if you've got Microsoft Viva Engage, especially if you're new, please do delve into that a little bit and think about how you can give frontline colleagues these roles, right, to get them really actively involved in the community. These roles, my view is that these roles should not typically be held within the committee. I don't think that's the point of it. I think these are roles that are brilliant for delegating out to network members and wider to get other people engaged in what the network is doing. Okay. Tip number 9, right? So data and evidence for what to do with frontline colleagues. This is a tricky one because it can be tricky to get data and to get views and opinions from this particular group, because they may or may not have access to laptops. They may not be as willing to give their data. They may not be as used to being surveyed, for example. So it can be difficult. So I would say you need a combination of one-on-one stories, which is the things that you're going to collect when you go onto site. So all these individual conversations, you're going to start to look for themes and threads, and you're almost going to build up some data based on the conversations. And that's why you want to, as networks, be having lots of conversations, right? Because otherwise, if you just go out to one site and you have 2 or 3 conversations, that's not really data. That's just the opinions of 3 people, right? So for stories and for anecdotes and for views to be data, you kind of have to have more of them. So, maybe as a network, you need to kind of like create a form for capturing views or a handful of questions that you all ask when you go and you meet individuals in these frontline locations. That then you can start to turn it into data, right? So that's one thing. The other thing obviously is survey data. So if you can create surveys that will work for the frontline with the tools and the access that they have to company systems, great. If you can't, maybe tap into HR in terms of how they are currently able to run surveys and see whether you can piggyback off that. If not, maybe you just work with them to have a question or two added into the sort of overall global survey that goes out to all colleagues. But you have a specific question maybe that is targeted towards the front line, which maybe links them to the network. Maybe you're even starting with awareness of the networks, okay? And then tip number 10, partner with or collaborate with local community organisations. And the reason I say this is a lot of local community groups, charities, CICs, etc. are really keen to work with large organisations. And if you have this as a challenge, the chances are you are an incredibly large organisation or a very large employer. Lots of charities and CICs want to work with you. And it's not necessarily that they want funding, they just want their profile raised, and actually working with an organisation like yours is a great opportunity of doing that. So actually getting local community organisations and groups in that support their local communities at grassroots level with a range of things, whether that be health, physical health, mental health, well-being, emotional well-being, financial literacy, social mobility type issues, career support, personal and professional development, whatever it be. There are all of these groups out there. And if you're in the UK, I'm thinking of things like Andy's Man's Club, some great people on LinkedIn that have got campaigns about parenting and caring and all kinds of things. So tap into some of these local community organisations that can come in to your local sites and maybe run a half day health screening, for example, or a half day talking about blood donations or something, or a half day talking about the importance of reading with your kids, or whatever it be, right? Or there's all kinds, like the possibilities are endless, right? So partnering with local community organizations again can be a really good way actually for you as networks to share the workload so that you're not doing it all. So by partnering with these groups who are close to your frontline sites, they actually do some of the work. It has a tie into the network. It's hopefully very relevant for the frontline colleagues that are based there. And Bob's your uncle, as they say. So that's it for my top 10 tips for frontline engagement. This is front and center. I'm currently working on some training material that I'm actually delivering this week for an organization. And they have a huge frontline network of colleagues literally across the world, and this is a topic that's going to be a hot one. So I thought I'd just jump on here and share my latest thinking with you. Have a good one. If you like this video, if the content was useful, give it a thumbs up. Please share it with somebody and subscribe for more content. All right, I will see you soon. Bye.